Okay, so the FeesMustFall movement was framed through the media coverage as being quite a violent and irrational outburst by entitled students. However, this was not really experienced to be a true reflection within our university context at the time. An example of this portrayal by the media within our context would be the images of burning tires, which were photographed in such a way as to portray violent images rather than to encapsulate the entire context within which the tires were actually being burnt. Often it was more of a source of warmth or light at night for us. So you can see examples here of how pictures are taken, often at a downward facing angle to get these raging flames, often with black male bodies at the forefront of these burning flames, never really getting in the whole context of who else was there and what else was happening. So the media made contact with a lot of students on the ground to gain information about the events that were occurring throughout the weekend. I was personally contacted by a relatively large media station, a national media station, to provide them video footage and photographs of what was happening on my campus. And unfortunately, these are the images I could provide them with. And I say unfortunately because they soon responded after a day and said, please don't bother sending us our footage. It's really not exciting and we're not going to put it on our website and report on it. So I felt a lot like my voice was completely disregarded because it wasn't aligned with their agenda of portraying the movement in a very violent and dangerous way, and they really had no shame in saying that. It was very upfront. It was, it's just, sorry, your news isn't exciting. We're going to look at other campuses where, people are more willing to send us pictures taken from angles that, look in a certain way. But the physical violence experienced was imparted on us by community members, fellow students mostly, well, only those that weren't participating in the movement, and police officials. So the first experience we had of physical violence from fellow students related to several incidences of students who were not present during the day, but would arrive late in the evening heavily intoxicated, and they would become verbally abusive, specifically towards the female leadership of the movement, and they would attempt to undermine the movement, and some even attempted to impart their own agenda of becoming violent, trying to rally people up to become violent with them and things like that, and we had to get them sort of removed away from us all because it was a bit dangerous.
And then we had also from the community members, we had lovely experiences sometimes where people would drive past and tell us thank you what you're doing for our kids and the kids of this country, and then other times you'd have relative people driving past shouting all weird obscenities at us and not even stopping their car to come and shout at us in person, but just like speeding past, like all the stars going on the side, and we're just trying to sit there. And then we also had, I was sitting there the one day, and I think this was a Friday, so that by then it had calmed down quite significantly, and a very well-known community member who kind of was seen a lot by students around, not involved with the varsity directly, but he parked his car there and got out of his car. Now everyone was allowed to walk onto campus all the time. I mean, this was during the day, people came up and down as much as they wanted to. And he parked his car and then he got out his door, and then very much facing us, looking at us directly, cocked his gun, put it in his holster, walked around to the other side of his car, out of his cubby hole, took out another gun, cocked that too and put it in the back of his pants, looking at us. He didn't even do it inside of his car because he was scared. He did it to intimidate us.
A lot of the students formed a wall between these college students and the police. And when I arrived there, because a friend had asked me to come and assist them, as I walked on the streets, there was just people running down the road screaming and smoke hanging in the air from the stun grenades that the police had shot at the students. So the Vice-Chancellor arrived pretty soon after that and was in a heated debate with the police commander, begging him to allow the students to return back onto campus, and that we were in no way being violent and did not need to be shot at. So the students were all standing around listening to this. I was part of that, just listening to the Vice Chancellor addressing the police commander. When a female police officer drove up towards where we were all standing, very peacefully, and climbed out of her car and immediately raised a gun to my forehead. And so I stood there shocked by this. And I was standing with a friend of mine who did journalism, and she immediately picked up her camera and said, "You will answer for this," and started snapping. So the police officer holstered her gun and quickly moved off into the crowd. So there were expectations and pressure placed on us during this time of the movement to still meet our academic deadlines, despite an official shutdown being declared by university management, as well as a lack of consideration for the emotional and physical distress which we were experiencing at that time, which is quite ironic when we're positioned within the psychology department. Also, no psychological services were made available for any of the protesting or non-protesting students during the week of protest. There was no attempt to even engage with the students at barricades and the organizations of the movement to allow students to have access. I think what's important to take from this is the need to question our role as a profession and as psychologists in this whole process of social movements and things like that, and to really start to think about, like Kempi was saying, prevention. Yes, we can see people after a protest in our offices for therapy, and we can intervene like that, but what can we do before that? What can we do to assist? Where do we slot in with, where is our role in these movements as a field and as individuals within this field?
Talking to people who aren't involved in the process and, explaining to them maybe what are the issues here that we're dealing with and how can they better understand it, to try to eliminate some of the uncomfortableness and stigma maybe around it.
May I ask, how would you as students explain to somebody on the outside like myself the role of the students who are responsible for the burning of libraries and burning of vehicles in what is a very, very valuable exercise?
We can talk about our own experiences because we can understand them, but to speak for someone else can become dangerous. But I think from my experience, and Elna touched on it earlier as well, we were met with a lot of violence when we did nothing to, in a sense, deserve that violence. We were not acting violently and needed stun grenades shot at us and needed water cannons brought and the 3 K9 units and these kinds of things.
I think if you're constantly being met with they're closing doors, and they have been closing doors for 5 years before that happened. I mean, people were trying and trying and trying, and no one's listening. So what are you supposed, I don't know what the other options are. I think that's what we need to figure out, because what we have been doing hasn't been working. And
burning things doesn't
work either.
So we need to find
how are we going forward? Because I can understand how it does get violent. Because I know what my body felt like after that weekend, and we were pretty okay campus to be on. So me not being a violent person ever in my life, I can see that happening very easily.
One of the reasons people are not able to develop that empathy is because they don't have the means to understand the level of anger that it takes to get to that destruction. The level of anger it takes to burn down a building, to really sort of that rage. And that rage has been building for a long time. And I think until we can sort of start developing that awareness around us, people are going to have to keep resorting to more and more violent means to try and get their message across.